Let's turn to business news now with Giles Beckford. Giles, there was a fairly resolute defence by the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Graham Wheeler, on how he's conducting monetary policy today.
Yes, for Graham Wheeler, this was a set-piece defence for him. It was an opportunity to be able to lay out quite clearly why he's conducting policy the way it is. As the Chinese would say, these are interesting and, as Graham Wheeler would call it, turbulent times for central bankers.
Giles? Who's he defending himself from? Sorry, I know you're going to elaborate around the defence, what he's saying, but why is he feeling the need to say this?
Well, clearly there's been, first of all, a good deal of criticism from some financial commentators and analysts who said that he's not been aggressive enough. There are those political pressures that he's been feeling. On the one hand, we've had John Key and Bill English saying, well, just get on and do it. Get inflation there. And we've had Grant Robertson and others on the other side suggesting, well, the mechanisms that you've got and the policy approach that you have are broken. And we actually need to get back to actually reforming why we're doing what we do and how we conduct monetary policy. So he felt that he needs to actually stand up and wave the flag. He's got a year left in his contract. I'm willing to bet that he won't be either reapplying or he would not be reappointed anyway, but that's another thing for 12 months' time. But he needed to be able to say, this is the policy that I'm following and this is why I'm following it. And clearly today he laid out the three big issues that are there. One, that the policy approach of inflation targeting is broken. He says there's no evidence that there's anything better, and indeed to go and pursue other objectives such as economic growth or low unemployment would only confuse issue. The second one is that he should be more aggressive, so he should have been cutting all the way through this year rather than just a couple of cuts that he has made. He was saying, well, I didn't want to actually provoke volatility in financial markets, and one of his instructions from the government is don't cause any volatility in financial markets if you can help it. And he said there was actually no need for us to be cutting by, say, 0.5 percentage point. And then the third option was, well, just do nothing. Who needs to cut interest rates when your economy is actually going gangbusters at 3% or more? And he was saying, well, we actually need to get inflation back into the target band, and by doing nothing, it would make people think that we've given up the fight on inflation. And the last thing that this governor wants is entrenched inflation, low inflation expectations. He wants people to think that prices will rise, and consequently, that was the defence that he mounted today. I have to say that financial markets weren't particularly impressed. The New Zealand dollar, and this would really get up, I would think, Graham Wheeler's nose. The New Zealand dollar spiked up well past, well past 73 cents. So I mean, the man can't win. I mean,
the poor beggar can't win.
He couldn't buy a trick.
No. I mean, we're used to reserve governments being betwixt and between all these various pressures, but I can't recall one having to live this out quite so publicly and precariously as poor old Graham Wheeler does. Lots of company earnings today, Giles.
Yes, indeed. Just before we go, though, just say that I think Graham Wheeler has been, to some extent, the architect of his own discomfort, but we'll save that for another day.
OK, yes, it's a big discussion. It's fascinating. I must be getting old because I'm finding the Reserve Bank Governor and his position absolutely fascinating. But what a balancing act.
I think you need to take up another hobby, John, really. Anyway, let's go to the company earnings. Mercury Energy, otherwise known as Mighty River Power in a former life, solid lift in profit, lower costs, asset sales, and the present of a special dividend for shareholders because it doesn't foresee the need for any big spending. Tourism Holdings having a stormer on the back of those record visitor numbers and a record profit from them. And they see that the tourism boom will keep going for another couple of years at least. Not so good for New Zealand refining. They made a lot of hay last year when the margins were really high and the oil prices were really low. I'm afraid the party's over and they had quite a coming down to earth, just a small first half year profit. The result was they got pretty hammered on the share market. And that share market number, I can tell you, the top 50 index, it nudged 5 points higher at 7,467. And the New Zealand dollar, courtesy of the Governor of the Reserve Bank, 73.2 US cents, 95.8 Australian. Good if you're travelling, bad if you're exporting.
Giles Beckford, our business editor, thanks so much. Giles Beckford live from Wellington.